So this is our last speaker for today. It's Leif Lindholm from Linaro. Yes, go for it.
Thanks. Hi there. In the interest of full disclosure, just like last year, I am paid full-time by ARM, and I am seconded full-time into Linaro. Another full disclosure. This entire presentation can be summarized into approximately 2 sentences, but I figured I'd string it out a bit to make a bit higher likelihood that you'll actually catch it. Really, I want to see more open source drivers and more open source platform support in the wild for UEFI, and that's the basis of it. Currently, there is some platform support and some device drivers available in the EDK2 source tree, but it's kind of spread all over the place. There's the PCAT chipset stuff, there's the BeagleBoard and OMAP 3500 support, there are ARM Limited platforms, and then there's the new ValueView 2 Intel things that also arrived recently. But they're all kind of in different places all over the tree, and you kind of need to know where they are to find them or go looking. There are very few drivers. I found a UART 16550 hidden somewhere under somewhere, but you know, they cannot be easily found. Most of the real platforms, I say real as in an actual piece of hardware that you can get and build some software for and put it on, most of those aren't buildable. You know, you need to download some additional packages and you know, including some binary drivers and so on before you can actually get at it, which means that you're increasing the barrier of entry for getting, you know, crazy geek hobbyists playing around with this stuff. But also, you know, having a coexistence of multiple platforms in a single tree is tricky. And there is a bit of a hurdle to get across to get into where we actually have something to work with. I come from a Linux kernel background. All platforms exist in one tree, all drivers exist in the same tree. And this gives many benefits. It's quite simple to verify that when you change some core code, you're not breaking existing platforms. If you have drivers for common components, you implement them once and then you reuse them across multiple different devices. And many of these components can be shared between completely different platforms and architectures. But it does make the development process more complex, and it does make the drivers a little bit more complex than many of the UEFI ports today might be. So from a Linaro perspective, we would like to have more reference code available out there to get people started so they can have a look at, okay, how am I expected to write a network driver? Today you're kind of struggling to find something in the tree to tell you how to do that. We want more open source drivers. Now, that doesn't mean we want everything to be open source and force only completely open source platforms in this tree, because if we do that, we're not going to get them, at least not very quickly. But we do want to be able to get more open source out there available for people to use. And we want to really minimize code duplication, both for drivers and for platforms and everything else. Whereas today, most real platforms aren't in EDK2, so most of the different platforms duplicate a lot of code. So in a perfect world, we would just push this straight into EDK2, and we'd have some, you know, platform subdirectory, some SoC chipset subdirectories, some specific drivers directory. But we need to start somewhere, so we went and did that. So as of last week, this kind of describes what the Linaro release process for our monthly builds of UEFI for the various platforms we support. We set up a new repository, and we import this platform/drivers repository into an existing EDK2 tree using either manually, or we're actually using a Git feature called submodules to do this. And we converted the Linaro EDK2 Git repository to use this. In the past, we had this really horrific dance where we were merging topic branches every month. And if you don't understand what that means, don't go off and learn it. But we're now actually using this new method to make our monthly releases. So we want to make sure that we were able to build test anything that's in this tree, even if it's something we're not including in the release, even if it's not something we have the hardware to test. We want to be able to do that. Here's my perhaps simplistic view of how a current UEFI BIOS setup looks. You have your EDK2, you have some CPU support you get from your CPU vendor, you might have some chipset SoC support you get from some vendor, you have some platform code and drivers, and then you have some vendor additions and value add, and you stick all that together, and that's BIOS. My suggestion, of course, is that we keep using the EDK2, we keep having the vendor additions for the bits that vendors want to keep for themselves. We have a platform tree of some kind that we merge into this, and we stick that into a BIOS. And simplistically, the kind of layout I've made in source tree for now, which is entirely open for discussion, is just splitting things into drivers, platforms, and SoC / other silicon component devices. And as I said, this is proper bike shedding levels. I don't really care if anyone would like to change anything like this. I'd be happy to do that, but that's what we have for now. So, to summarize, I'm interested in getting feedback on the overall approach. I'm interested in hearing if someone else is doing something else to get more open source code into the UEFI ecosystem. And I'd be happy to talk to people about that all week. And that's it.